Get ready for Tuesdays with Tiffany Lewis. Tune in at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time to Be the Change. Only on Clear Source Radio, where we inspire people soul to soul. Only on Clear Source Radio.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Good afternoon. Thank you, Melanie, right off the bat, for the wonderful introduction. I really enjoyed your show. Thank you for the shout out. And just thank you. All right. So tonight's show is going to be about a wonderful cause. And I am going to turn on some music for her. All right. I have a really good show lined up for you guys. It begins with a prayer. So, all right. Here we go.
Giving us today, and thank you for Tiffany. Father, the things you've done in her life with her ministry. And Lord, I just praise you for an opportunity to just yet again share your hope and your love with other people. So I just praise you, Father, for that. And I pray that the words that I would speak, Lord, would be from you and not from me. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you.
So, are you wanting me to just kind of tell the whole story about as far as what, like just show hope, or just kind of how, because it's kind of a long story of how, if I go back to, you know, the beginning type deal of how things work, how I got to this point. So what are you?
You can tell me whatever you want to tell me. I'd love to hear your story. I'd love to hear as far back as you'd like to go, but definitely how Shield of Hope. And let me just introduce you on the air real quick. I've got Eric Bauer on the line with me on Clear Source Radio. This is Tiffany Lewis with Be the Change. And Eric has a 501c3 nonprofit called Shield of Hope. And now, Eric, I'm going to let you tell us everything about it.
Okay, so my name is Eric Bauer. I'm the president and founder of Shield of Hope Ministries, which is based out of Texas. A little bit about the backstory on how all of this started out. I grew up in the church, in a Catholic church specifically, from a very young age, and so I knew the Lord as far as who He was and things like that. And I would go to church, and I would read the Bible, I would pray, and I would do all those things, and I would try to be a good person.
Right.
And I did all of those things leading up towards high school. I met my wife, Kimberly, in chemistry class, of all places, in Texas. So that's kind of a cliche thing, because I played football and she was on the dance drill team. So we always get a good laugh out of that.
Okay.
And so my wife actually has known the Lord from a very young age. She grew up from a Baptist background. And so, of course, as we got to know each other and became friends, she would ask me my questions about the church that I would go to and the things that we did. And I would ask her questions and such things like that. And so, of course, there were things that she understood that I didn't understand, because she had a personal relationship with Christ. And at the time, I didn't know what that was or what that meant, or even what that could possibly look like.
Right.
My wife and I got married. I graduated high school in 2001. My wife graduated in 2002. And though we were the same age, we were just a year apart. And so I joined the Air Force right out of high school. And after I had gotten stationed in Minot, North Dakota, for my first duty station, when my wife graduated, we got married in July of 2002.
Right.
So we were very young, obviously 19 years old. We're getting married. We're coming from, we don't have anything, and we're moving to a completely different state with no friends, no family. And that was difficult for us, because we were babies at that time.
Right.
And not having, myself not having really known the Lord at that time, really created all sorts of issues and problems in our marriage. And I had done things that I shouldn't have done. one of the things was is we were really wanting to get out of North Dakota, and one of the ways to do that was to put in orders somewhere else.
Right.
Well, because of the type of duty station it was when we guarded nuclear missiles, it was difficult to get out of there. One of the options was that you could go to Korea for a year and do a remote, and my wife really didn't want me to go. But I, at the time, I thought that was probably the best thing for our marriage and just to get of where we were. So I actually put in for orders to go. And
Okay.
I was a little surprised because when it came out who had gotten orders, I actually got orders to Korea. So now I had to tell my wife, who didn't want me to put in for orders,
Right.
that we're going to Korea. And because at that time I was obviously not in a good place.
Right.
I didn't tell her that that I had actually put in orders. I had told her that I had just come up on a list, and that's just the way that it worked out. And of course, that was a lie,
Right.
obviously. And she had found out about it with some of our friends when we were eating one night, and they had mentioned it. And so that wasn't obviously a very good time for us. And then, I was in Korea for an entire year by myself. And though I got to come back at the 6-month mark for a month, it still definitely put a strain on our marriage for sure.
Right.
And I was definitely not, being a man of God and doing things and leading my family as I should have during that time. And so as time gone on, we had children, and we have 3 children now. Presley is 10 years old, Gracie is 5, and Jacob is 4 months. And
Okay.
so once we started having Presley, at that time we were living in San Antonio, and I was just starting to get out of the Air Force, and I had gotten hired on with the Austin Police Department in Texas.
Nice. Okay.
So that was an exciting time. I was really excited to leave the military at that time after having done it for 6 years, being in military police there. And we
Right.
were ready to just settle down and not be moved around and all those sorts of things. And so we were pretty excited about that. And as I started in law enforcement, there are a lot of things that they don't tell you that is never really spoken of, and that's
Right.
really the darkness that you're going to come across and face in law enforcement. And
Right.
so I worked in Southeast Austin at night, worked a night shift, and it was a pretty high crime area. It's a pretty big area for gangs and whatnot. And so over time, you start to when you're dealing with these types of calls, and you're getting yelled at and cursed at, and people are trying to fight you, and all these types of things, and
Right.
that's every single call that you go to.
Yep.
Eventually, you kind of start to you start seeing everybody as bad. And the reality of it is in law enforcement, you have to be very cynical, because you have to look at everybody, regardless of what's going on, as, does this person want to kill me?
Right.
And when you have to look at everybody like that, unfortunately what happens is you start to look at everybody like that, regardless of whether you're on duty or you're at the house, because unfortunately it's a switch that turns on that you can't turn back off.
Wow.
And so what that does is that puts you in a very dark place, because what happens is you start to only hang around other police officers because other people don't understand what you go through and they don't get it. And what happens then is when a bunch of cops get together, all they talk about are the calls, the different calls that they go on. So, even when you leave, when you're off duty and you're hanging around cops, you're really not off duty because you're still talking about the same stuff.
Right.
And it really does drain you big time. And the unfortunate part is most of us that get to that point don't realize it. And so my wife would always say, hey, you've changed, and you're not the same person, and you're different. And I would always just kind of chalk it up to, well, of course I have, because now I see things differently and whatnot. So, but I didn't quite understand the type of change that she was talking about.
Right.
And that really left me in a very dark, hopeless place, to where at that point, then I just started to hate people. I just hated to be around people. I didn't want to deal with people anymore. You start to kind of isolate yourself, and that just creates a whole other set of problems.
Right.
So out of that, what happens is you start to see officers starting to drink, and then they become really become abusing alcohol, or they get hurt on the job and they prescribe pain pills.
Right.
And then now that turns into, I'm addicted to these pain pills.
Right.
And it's just a dark road that just kind of starts to spin out of control.
Yep.
And which accounts for a lot of the divorces, the divorce rate, strained relationships with your children, because when you go on these calls, you're taking calls where you're seeing, dead bodies, or you take a car crash where a small child is thrown from the vehicle and is killed. And most people, those aren't things that people would normally see in their lifetime. And you're seeing these things on somewhat of a constant basis.
Right.
And so kind of, I think, as a defense mechanism, what happens is you start to just emotionally shut things off.
Right.
Because that's the only way to deal with it. And then you don't really talk about it. You can't really go home and tell your wife that, hey, this is what I saw today. Because obviously, that's, especially for my wife, she would stress out about that, and it would, it would cause her anxiety and things. And so, of course, I didn't want to bring that onto her. And you can talk to other police officers about it, but really, it's just kind of a mentality of just suck it up and move on, and you've got to go to the next call, because when something like that happens, you don't just go home. Now you're making a traffic stop, or you're going to, you're helping somebody change a tire, and 20 minutes ago you were, sitting there waiting for the medical examiner to take a dead body away. So there's so many things that go on there that really just aren't ever talked about.
Right.
And even in the academy that I went through, which was 32 weeks, there was really no talk about, this is what you can expect, this is what you're going to see. And when you start to kind of go into this place that everybody eventually goes into, this is what you can do to come out of that. That never happens.
Right.
And so one of the very troubling things that I've recently learned, and has been a huge burden on my heart, is just suicides in law enforcement. And there are some statistics that I recently found from some credible websites where in 2016 it said that every 81 hours a police officer commits suicide.
Right.
So to kind of put that into perspective, I get paid bi-weekly, so every time I get my paycheck, an officer of the U.S. has killed themselves. And that's troubling. But it's also even more troubling because it's not something that's ever really talked about.
Exactly.
And so, you have an officer who gets killed while on the line of duty, and there's benefits for that person's family, very good benefits for their family if that were to be the case. And that's wonderful. I'm so grateful that at least here in the state of Texas that those opportunities are afforded. But then you have an officer who takes their life. And in the law enforcement community, what often happens is that person's somewhat kind of shunned, and they're just looked at as a coward, and they're not going to have all of those kinds of benefits and services. And that's a problem, because whether you get killed on a call while you're at work, or whether you kill yourself, at the end of the day, it's the direct result is because you were a police officer, and that's why you lost your life.
Right.
Whether you took it or it was taken from you, a lot of that, it just directly comes from those being in that dark place, being in a place where you have no hope, and you have no, you feel like you have no way out, and this is the only answer. And that's not something that people normally think about when they think of a police officer. So what happened, and I went through all of those things, and so I didn't wake up one day and just kind of have a revelation where the Lord had opened my eyes. It was over a period of time, and I know that my wife was definitely praying for me. And at one point, she had said that she had actually prayed for me for 7 years that I would have a relationship with Christ.
Wow.
And that, to me, that just kind of blew me away, because we just in general as people, we're so quick to give up. I prayed for that person for a week, and that's it. I'm not going to pray for them anymore, or whatever the case is. But she prayed for me for 7 years, and during that time, we experienced a lot of struggles in our marriage, At that time, we all had, different people have different things that they're addicted to. My thing that I was addicted to was pornography.
Okay.
And that obviously put a huge strain on my marriage, especially when my wife had found out about it. It was a very, just a dark time in my life. And, one of the things that I could remember was I knew that, and I think it says in 1 Corinthians that you will not be tempted beyond your means, but in that temptation, the Lord will give you a way out. And I knew that, and there were times where I would fall back into that, and I knew if I just asked the Lord to save me from this, that He would, but I chose not to ask Him because I knew that He would save me from it. And it was just, it was a very difficult time in our marriage, and there was plenty of, reasons, good reasons, worldly reasons why, my wife should have divorced me and left me and things because of the stuff that I was doing. But I just praise the Lord that she was a godly woman, and she didn't give up.
Right.
So one time we were sitting in church, and we just kind of started going to church regularly. We went to a church in College, Texas called Fellowship Church Palm Creek, and it was a non-denominational church. And we had a friend that I was in the academy with, and they were going to that church at the time, and so they had invited us. And so we started going, and of course I was still working weekends, so when I was off and able to go to church, that we would go. And our pastor at the time, he was doing a sermon series on the second coming. And he started about in Luke where Jesus was kind of giving this parable about His return, and He says, you see a cloud in the west, and a storm's coming, you're prepared, but yet I tell you I'm coming, you're not prepared. And that was something the Lord really used to just it almost immediately opened my eyes, because I asked the question, if the Lord came back right now, would I be ready? Right. And I knew in my heart that I wasn't at all ready. Right. And so that kind of, I think, jump-started things, and the Lord used that to kind of open my eyes. And then He started revealing things to me, and I started to learn and to understand what it was like to have a relationship with Him. And it took time. It took several years worth of just seeking the Lord and wanting to have that relationship with Him. And, for those that are listening and don't really quite understand what it means to have a relationship, the best example that I could ever think of is a relationship between a father and a son. Not a strained relationship that we see oftentimes, but a good, healthy relationship where, the father loves the son more than anything and would do anything for that son, and would never cast him away. And just as the son wants to be obedient to the father and wants to live for him and to do things that he knows would please him, that's the type of personal relationship that Christ wants to have with us. And so I really started to see and understand what that actually looked like. And so through that, my wife, back in, November of 2013, was in retail management. And so our work schedules were always so messed up to where she would be off, and then I would work, so that way we would have someone to watch to be with our children, and vice versa. And so she started having just these neurological issues to where they were basically like strokes. Mm-hmm. And what that did is it kind of created a situation to where she really wasn't able to keep up with the busyness of the retail world and managing and things. And so we had prayed about it, and it had come to the conclusion that she really needed to just quit her job and stay home. Right. So she did that. And a few months later, we had heard about the church that we were with at that time was going to a mission trip to Honduras. Okay. And I didn't know, I wanted to go on a mission trip. I didn't really have any specific reason why, but with my wife's schedule in the past, that would have never been anything that we could have done.
Right.
Because I would have never had a whole week where I could have gone somewhere. And I didn't want to just go somewhere because I wanted to. I only wanted to do it if that is what the Lord was wanting me to do. So
Right.
I prayed about it because we only had about a month and a half to 2 months, and that trip was going to cost $1,600, and I didn't have an extra $1,600 laying around to pay for that trip. And so I just prayed about it, and
Okay.
I set up a fund for if people wanted to donate to that they could. And at that trip, I ended up paying around $50 out of pocket, and the
Wow.
rest was donated. So that was kind of my confirmation. Okay, Lord, because I said, if this is what you want me to do, then I know you'll provide a way. And
Right.
He provided the way, so that was my confirmation. So I went really not knowing why or what to expect. And so obviously I'd been in other countries before, so I wasn't clueless to how things were in other parts of the world. And I really got to see joy and people who what we would consider to have nothing.
Right.
And we're there, and there was a church that we visited, which was actually somebody's house, and we're talking just concrete walls with a wooden type shutters for the window, and in the living room with some plastic chairs. That was the church, and there
Wow.
was one bedroom where the whole family slept on one bed. And there's just the joy on people's faces was just very encouraging and humbling. And I remember there was this water trough outside, and there was kind of like a plastic type bowl, and these kids would just kind of scoop the water out of this water that's just kind of sitting in this basin, and then they would drink it. And of course, we were told, do not drink that water because it'll make you very sick.
Right.
And it really made me think, because I really thought, well, just because I happen to be born in the U.S. and I live here in the United States, which is an extremely wealthy and blessed country compared to the rest of the world, do I deserve to have clean drinking water, and they don't deserve to have clean drinking water?
Exactly.
And that's something that really bothered me.
Right.
And I wanted to know what could I do, for these kids? How could we help them in just basic needs like clean water? Over there they don't have gender-specific clothing. So, for instance, here in the U.S.,
Wow.
you would see a girl would wear a princess-type pink shirt, and a boy would wear a blue Transformers type shirt.
Okay.
Over there, they don't. There's none of that. It doesn't matter what the color or what's on the shirt. If it semi-fits, someone will wear it, and it's not based on gender, whether male or female. And so that was something that kind of opened my eyes to that. And then also with shoes, kids would wear shoes, and maybe they were too big or too small. It didn't really matter. It was something that they had on their feet.
Right.
And so that was very. It was a very humbling experience for me at that time. And so I had come back after that, and we were there in March of 2014. So I had come back, and I was just kind of thinking of how can we get stuff to these kids? How can we do things? Because you can't just mail stuff to Honduras.
Right.
Things just don't, in Honduras, don't work like they work here. And so our pastors from our church were going back in June because a fellow brother in Christ of mine has a ministry called River of God Ministries, which is also a Gospel of the Power ministry down in Honduras. And so one of the things they were doing is they were going down there to have a conference to train up pastors for that ministry. And so I'm not a pastor, and so, but I wanted to go to see just how all of this could work and how the Lord would use me. And so I had asked if it would be okay if I had went, and of course they all had said yes. By all means, if you want to come, you're more than welcome. Though I kind of felt like a third wheel, or I didn't want to feel like a third wheel in going, because I wasn't really serving a purpose.
Right.
But I just kind of knew that the Lord wanted me to go.
Okay.
So I went in June of 2014, and just backtracking a little, in March I had met a gentleman named Israel, and he an older gentleman who lived there in Honduras, in Urito, and which is one of the main places that we would go to with that ministry in Israel. Essentially runs the ministry from the Honduran side.
Okay.
And he was telling me his testimony about how he used to run drugs for the cartels in the U.S. And eventually it had caught up with him, and he got sentenced to 9 years in federal prison up in Pennsylvania. And he said he spent about 5 years in solitary confinement, and the only thing he had in there was a Bible. And
Wow.
that's where he found the Lord. So when he was released from prison, he was sent back to Honduras, and he started evangelizing. And so that was kind of, that was his story. And so with me being a police officer, when he would introduce me to people, he would actually tell people that I was the officer who arrested him. And of course everybody would laugh, and it was kind of their joke. But I told Israel my testimony kind of like what I'm telling you and the listeners today. And he would tell me that he would say, Eric, you should really talk to the officers here, because there's a lot of corruption and they don't know the Lord. And I really think that that it would be good for them to hear what you have to say. And
Right.
when he initially told me, I kind of thought, well, that sounds like a great idea. I'm up for whatever I can do would be fine. So when we went back in June, Israel had said the same thing again. And we were at his house. I remember it was around 7:30, which over there it's completely dark at that time, regardless of the time of year. And it was raining. And Israel told me, he said, Brother Eric, there's 3 police officers that are going to come over so you can talk to them. And this wasn't planned. I didn't know that this was going to happen. And so, they're literally a minute or two away, and he's just now telling me this.
Right.
And I didn't have anything planned or prepared, and so I just said, Lord, I have no idea what I'm going to say to these officers, but Lord, I just pray that the Holy Spirit would speak through me, and that whatever it is that I say, that would be your words, Father, and not my words. So
Right.
there was a sergeant, a female officer, and another male officer that had come over to his house. And I was sitting in Israel's kitchen, and I was sitting on a stool, and they were just kind of standing in front of me, and Israel was standing next to me, and one of the pastors was kind of in the doorway just looking on. And so I just started talking to them, telling them about my experience in law enforcement, my testimony about how I used to be in a very dark place,
Right.
doing the job, and how I used to just be in a place where I hated people. And as I'm talking to them, I can see that they understand what I'm saying, and
Right.
I'm realizing that they're in that place where they're lost and they hate people. And I just started to realize that, despite a language barrier, because I don't speak fluent Spanish, despite cultural differences and being from a different country, that
Right.
you have 2 completely different police officers, but they feel and they go through the exact same thing.
Exactly.
And that was an amazing revelation to me, because I just wouldn't have thought that would have been the case. And so as I'm speaking to them, I didn't know this at the time, but I was later told that they said Israel was kind of sweating because of the stuff that I was telling him to say. And so Israel was just translating what I was saying, and I was telling them, that if you take money, that's not right. You shouldn't take things from people. And I told them, God calls us to be a light in a dark world, and as a police officer, you have an amazing opportunity to be able to be that light
Right.
for people. And so then I started to kind of ask them, what are your needs? What are things that you don't have in order to be able to do your job? And I was completely blown away. And one of the first things they said, that we don't have flashlights.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was shocked, because here in the U.S., that's just a very minor basic thing that you would always have. And what I came to learn is that they essentially had a pair of military-style BDUs and a gun that was, questionable as to whether or not it would actually function properly.
Wow.
They didn't have handcuffs. They didn't have flashlights. They didn't have pepper spray. They didn't have tasers for certain. They didn't have all those things that we have here.
Right.
And so they told me those things, and they said, boots, we have to buy our own boots, and we don't have money for boots. And even if they wanted to practice firearms training, they have to buy their own ammo, and they can't afford the ammo.
Wow.
Because even the ammo there is way more expensive than the ammo that's here in the United States.
Right.
And I just very quickly realized that, man, these guys are really working with minimal to no equipment and really minimal to no training.
Right.
And so I told them, well, I'll see what I can do, and the next time I come back, I will try my best to get you guys flashlights and boots.
Okay.
Because you have to be very careful about promising people things, especially in those types of countries. Because if they feel like you've promised them something and you don't deliver, then that relationship is done.
Right.
And so, just had a really good time of talking with them, and we probably spoke for about an hour and a half or so.
Okay.
After that, the next day we were going to be traveling about 4 hours by bus to go to a camp that's there for various types of organizations to come, and that's where the pastors were going to be doing their training. So we left, and I'll never forget, we were sitting in this kind of big open auditorium type room, and we were sitting at the tables eating breakfast, and Israel had come up behind me, and he just kind of put his hand on my shoulder and said, Brother Eric, he said that the sergeant that was there last night called me. He called me crying, saying he wanted to give his life to Christ. And so we all just looked at each other, and it was at that moment that I realized this is what the Lord has called me to Honduras to do, to share the hope and the love of Christ with these officers who are lost and broken. Right. And so that is really when Shield of Hope Ministry started. Though the name came later, the website and all those things came later, that's truly when the calling was revealed to me by the Lord. And so it was just a very great time. I came back several months later, and I had boots and I had flashlights for these officers. And so within the first month and a half of after June, so it was probably August time frame, Israel had called me and told me that one of the female officers that was there that night had arrested a lady for something, and she was somehow tied to one of the big mayors in one of the big cities. Right. And so that mayor had told several people in the police department that he was going to pay Yoselin, the female officer, to make that arrest go away. Wow. And she wouldn't take the money. Right. And so what happened after that is he basically put out a hit. That mayor put out a hit on her. Oh my gosh. So she basically was kind of tucked away in a police department. Wow. And she couldn't leave the police department because over there, if you're a police officer, it may be the same with other jobs, but if you're a police officer, there's some way that they do it to where they help pay for a home for you. Right. And so she left law enforcement, and her mom and her kids wouldn't have a home. So she was really kind of stuck. And so she basically kind of went into hiding at one of the police stations, hoping some of this would blow over. And eventually, in some way, shape, or form, that mayor was actually extradited to the U.S. to face federal charges for drug trafficking or whatever it was that he was involved with. Wow. And so it was wonderful because you have somebody who normally would have just taken that money and not thought twice about it. Yep. And they're saying no, and they're risking their lives to say no because now she understands that. And what we told them is that if you put your hope and your faith in Christ, He will provide for you in ways that you could never imagine, and you don't need to take that money. Because a lot of them feel like they have to take it because they make nothing. So if you make nothing and you still have a family to care for, if you stop somebody and they offer you $10, you're going to take it and justify it by saying, well, I have to feed my family. Right. And from that perspective, I totally understand where they're at. But what they don't realize is that, that's Satan working through that. That's not the Lord. And so if they give their lives to the Lord, He will provide those things, and they don't have to do that. And she was an example of that. And then when when we had come back and we had, so at that time, bringing her flashlights and boots wasn't really going to help her situation. So we donated money to her for her to be able to get a passport and things like that, so that if the Lord did call her to leave and flee from Honduras, that she would have an opportunity to do it. And so the sergeant who wanted to give his life to Christ and the other officer, we gave them the flashlights and the boots, and they were just so ecstatic and so happy and grateful for this. And so I kind of showed them just how you actually use a flashlight in law enforcement.
Oh, wow.
Because that's not something they were ever trained on.
Right.
And for us, it's very basic things, but for them, it's just not something, it's not training that they actually receive.
Right.
And so the sergeant, Sergeant Rodriguez, started telling me that basically back then when I had first met him, he had a very strained marriage to his wife, and I believe there was probably physical abuse there, and his kids were scared of him and didn't really want to be around when he would come home. And now, fast forward several months later, after him giving his life to Christ, because one of the things he also said is that he drank a lot too, and that was kind of the precursor to a lot of the issues.
Right.
And he had told me that he had stopped drinking, that his marriage with his wife has gotten so much better, and his kids love having him around. And that was awesome to see somebody just truly give their life to Christ, and to see complete restoration in marriage, restoration in relationship with their kids, and restoration between him and Christ, with the way that he was living his life. And to just be able to see that in such a short amount of time was just amazing. And I remember that night after they had the flashlights, we were sitting outside of Israel's home, and over there, every home is fenced in with barbed wire. And that's just how it is. And we were sitting outside of his door, and we saw the police officers drive by, and they were using their flashlights, and they were just shining the flashlights everywhere. And it was just such a great thing to see these guys just elated about a flashlight.
Yeah.
And so from there, over time, we've reached out to different companies. So now we actually get our flashlights from Hybrid Light.
Nice.
It's a company that does a lot of solar power type stuff for camping or just any kind of outdoor things. And so we contacted them and explained what we were doing, and they essentially gave us one of their flashlights for half off. So basically, we're able to get these flashlights for half the price of what someone would normally pay for them, which is a huge blessing. And the great thing about these lights is that, one, they're waterproof. They float. You can drop them, up to a certain height. And there's a cap on the back of them that unscrews. There's also a solar panel, and so these lights are 100% charged by solar power.
Wow.
Though you can plug them into an electrical outlet and charge them that way as well. But there's a USB cord at the bottom of that flashlight, and so these officers can plug in their phones and charge their phone off of the flashlight.
Oh, that's
which
amazing.
In Honduras, which in Honduras is really an amazing thing, because most of those places that they're in the mountains, they don't have electricity.
Yep.
And they would have to drive hours away just to find an outlet to charge their phone.
Right.
So it was a great thing. And so with the lights, what we would explain is that, one, this is a tool for you to be able to do your job effectively.
Right.
But two, and most importantly, that this is just a reminder to you that God is calling you to be a light in the dark world. And, John 12:46, which is one of the verses that this ministry really speaks about what we're about, is where Jesus says, whoever would... I came into the world so that whoever would believe in me would not remain in the darkness.
That's right.
And that's what that's about. That's what that flashlight represents.
Okay.
And so it's a great tool, because they're always going to have it. They need it for their job, and every time they turn that light on or they hold it, they're going to remember how someone told them that, man, God's calling me to be a light.
Right.
In this dark world. So
Wow.
So that they would have an opportunity to read the Word of God and have that with them.
Wow.
And it was great because I would hear stories of an officer who would arrest somebody, and they would they would have them, and that they would give them a Bible, or they would call one of the pastors, "You have a Bible, so I can give to this person because I want to tell them about Christ."
Right.
And we're just hearing these stories of officers' lives just changing in amazing and wonderful ways. And really, it's just this ministry, though it is new as far as how long it's been around.
Okay.
The Lord has just shown crazy amounts of favor with it, to where, you know, I'm going to Honduras usually several times a year to meet with these officers and talk with them and share Christ and different things, and then also to trying to bring it back to the police department that I'm in the area, and such things. So we've been used in many different ways and many different forms. So that is basically kind of how we got started.
That's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. So it's basically in Honduras right now, and we haven't brought it to particularly Austin Police Department yet?
Correct. We're slowly working that in locally here, where we've been meeting probably for the last 5 or 6 months now. We meet every third Monday of the month at our police association hall, which they've been graciously have offered that to us free of charge to be able to use the facility for that. And really, because a lot of people ask, well, what do you do exactly? And that's a tough question, because we don't do just one thing. We've had officers reach out to us. We've had spouses of officers reach out to us to just say, can you talk to my husband? You know, we're struggling and he's dealing with this and he needs help. And she recognizes it, but he's where I used to be, so he doesn't see it. And so we figure out ways to see what we can do. You know, prayer is a very, very powerful thing. And I once heard a pastor say, if I could just come to church and do nothing but pray, that would be the greatest thing that we could ever do. And so we can never, ever discount the power of prayer.
That's right.
And having an opportunity to know what to pray for someone is an amazing thing. So what we always ask is, how can we pray for you?
Right.
You know, we have so many opportunities, and we meet so many people on a day-to-day basis that the Lord is putting them in front of us for a reason.
Yep.
And, you know, we need to always recognize that and say, okay, Lord, how do you want to use me today? Who do you want to put in front of me so that I can share your love with? And, you know, you don't have to know somebody. It can be a complete stranger. It could be the waiter or waitress that serves you at a restaurant, you know, to ask them, hey, how can I pray for you?
That's right.
And, you know, we do that. And just the reactions on people's faces, they're surprised. You know, when we were in Honduras, we were just in Honduras back in May, and we had an opportunity to go there and share Christ with the Roatan Municipal Police as well as the National Honduran Police.
Nice.
And we ended up having 64 officers come through our training, and we showed them the movie Courageous, which, for those that don't know or haven't heard of it, is a Christian movie dealing with law enforcement.
Okay.
And there's many scenes and many instances in that movie that deal with brokenness, from an officer whose child was killed in a car accident to an officer who was not submitting all of the drugs and the evidence because he was selling it on the side because he was trying to make money.
Right.
And there's just so many different forms of brokenness. Another one, a father had left his girlfriend who was pregnant, and you know, just all sorts of brokenness that we deal with in this world. And it was interesting because each and every one of them, when we got into small groups that were able to talk, they all came up with something that they directly related to in the film of brokenness. And one of the officers said, my daughter was killed in a car accident 1.5 years ago.
Wow.
And so that was just to see them, and you could really see, just as we're speaking to them, the little change in their hearts right in front of us. And guys just really wanting more out of their lives, and not wanting to to just live in this darkness that they knew that they were in, and they were just really crying out. And the Lord in His timing bringing us there to get to talk to them was an amazing thing.
Right.
And that is what we want to do everywhere in the world. And our mission statement is very simple. It's just to share the gospel of Christ with law enforcement in their communities worldwide, because officers are in a very unique position. For instance, I part of our highway enforcement motors division, so I make contact with a lot of people throughout the day.
Right.
It could be a doctor, a lawyer, a school teacher, a janitor. It could be anybody.
Right.
And each person that I meet, I have an opportunity to love them, to just show them love, and to let them know that they're cared for. Even if I'm having to issue somebody a citation for something, I can still love them.
That's right.
And that's an amazing thing, because there's a call that I wanted to share with you that I know would speak to what you guys are doing.
Okay.
And then there was another incident that I wanted to speak to. We had an officer's wife reach out to us because of struggles and things. And, one of the things that she said that really stuck with me is that I wish there was just one person
Yep.
that could talk to him.
Yep.
And, how many times have I been that one person and I've not said something?
Right.
And we have to really, really think about that. And I took a call where a young female had jumped off of a high overpass onto one of our major roadways, and she had lost her life. And as I got there onto the scene, she literally had just driven her car to the top, to the highest point, and just walked out and just jumped over the barrier.
Wow.
And she was, when I got there, she was laying on the ground on her back. And when I walked up and I saw her, at that point she had already passed. And I could just see, tears in her eyes.
Right.
And I can just see the brokenness and the hopelessness on her face. And, I thought the first thing that came to my mind is, how many people did she come in contact with? Because this was in the afternoon.
Right.
How many people did she see that day?
Right.
That could have said something that could have given her
hope.
Hope. Could have given her a hug. Could have told her that, that you were special and that you were loved, and that God loves you very, very much.
Right.
And maybe that happened, maybe it didn't happen, but it really caused me to think. And that's why we do this, because I see so much brokenness and so much hopelessness on the faces of people, and I know exactly what it looks like because I used to be there.
Yep.
And I recognized it.
That's
and
right.
I don't want to miss an opportunity to share the love of Christ with them. And that is really what the Shield of Hope Ministries is all about.
That's wonderful.
It's loving them wherever they're at, just as Christ loved us right where we were at.
This is wonderful. And as we've spoken a little bit about, you and I have a lot in common. We're both just one person trying to save the entire world, but I'm really grateful that we've connected. I can relate to everything that you're going through and everything that your guys' mission is. We are aligned. Our missions are very similar, and we would love to step in and help with these police officers. We want to be that person. We have a lot of volunteers, and all we want to be is the person that says, I love you, you are amazing, God loves you. And I honestly believe that that's why you and I connected on social media the way that we did. This is going to be a beautiful collaboration.
Absolutely.
I can see it.
I'm very excited to see the Lord just using these things for His glory, so that we have that opportunity, as you said, to just tell somebody, even if it's just one person, that that you were loved, that you were, wonderfully and fearfully made by the Creator of everything. He says that I knew you before you were in your mother's womb, and I wove you together, and I counted every hair on your head. Tell me that person's not special.
That's right. That's awesome. Thank you so much for telling me your story. And again, I'm excited about what you're doing, and I can't wait to see where the future takes us. And I give you my word, I will do everything to reach out to more officers here in Austin Police Department. I'll get with you on my printer sponsor so we can get some flyers printed up and start passing them out to the police stations in the area. Giving people options is really what it comes down to. They just need to know that we exist.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I'm very grateful for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to tell me your story. And I wish you nothing but the best with Shield of Hope.
Thank you so much.
All right. You have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. That was an emotional show, but I hope that it was able to help somebody to understand how important it is, how many forms of brokenness. He made a very good point of saying that there are so many forms of brokenness, and he's right. And, being the light in a dark world is, even all the way down to a flashlight, it doesn't matter. It's whatever is put in front of us is an opportunity every day, all day. Any stranger that you see, you don't know what they're going through. Maybe you can't see their hopelessness or their brokenness. Maybe you should just smile at someone and find other ways to love people and help them get through every day. Because every day is a struggle when you're hopeless and you're, broken. Even if you can't see it. A lot of people that are broken put on a really good front. And, the suicide rates are outrageous, especially in law enforcement. When he talks about every time he picked up his paycheck, another officer had taken their own life by the hand of suicide, the rates are actually way higher than that. It's ridiculous. It's like 82%. So what we need is more lights in the world. We need more flashlights. We need each other. We need to help each other through everything. We need to stop all this hate and all this war and all this ugliness and just, be the bigger person, be the better person, the person that believes in somebody, the person that, gives a random person a hug or say, I love you to somebody that you haven't said that to today. And don't take any day for granted, because I always say this, you guys know me by now. You're not promised tomorrow. You're not promised this evening. You're not promised anything, not 1 second of your life. So if you have one life and you get one dash, right, when you pass, it's all about what is that dash? What is the thing between the time that you were born, the dash, and the time that you pass away? That is the most important thing in your life. It's what you do with every day that you are given. Every day is a blessing, and you are given that. It's not a promise. It's an opportunity. I try to surround myself with people who are the light. I really do. And, fortunately, I have a few people in my life that really are my light, my flashlight, and they help me through everything, especially my sister and best friend. And I'm grateful for these rare opportunities to get to connect with people, especially in the law enforcement community, because you probably know that I have a degree in criminal justice, so that holds a very special place in my heart. Also in nursing, so you can understand that I appreciate life, just from those 2 degrees alone. you have someone's life in your hand as a doctor or a nurse, and as a law enforcement officer, you're to serve and protect. And there's a fine line between serving and protecting and loving someone and not seeing, the most obvious signs. I know it's hard to love people sometimes. I know that. But if you just try, and I know, what we do at Pens for Pals is just a small piece of our way of showing how much we love every single person, no matter who you are, no matter what you've done. No one's judging you. I'm happy to write you a letter, connect with you, and sometimes you're the light, and sometimes you find the light in someone else. Maybe someone else is the light. And either way, it's a beautiful thing. And if it can get these suicide rates to stop, to drop it, and it can help somebody, I mean, really, what did it cost you? Nothing. Just smile. Be nice to someone. Ask someone if they're okay, but mean it. Mean it. Don't just say that. Everybody always says, how are you doing today? Stop doing that. Mean it. Be sincere. Literally walk up to people, look them straight in the eye, shake their hand, and say, how are you doing? And by the way, I'm here for you. I'm always here for you. If you ever need anything, do not hesitate. And you don't leave it as a question. You just put it out there and give them a way to contact you and hope that you can perhaps be a light to them. And sometimes, in very rare occasions, you'd be surprised who turns out to be the light for you. It's pretty amazing. So yeah, it was an emotional show, but it needed to be heard. And I'm so happy that it's going to be on iHeart Radio for everybody else to listen to in the world. And I hope that it inspires somebody, lots of somebodies, to just love someone and do things daily, especially when we're talking about family, friends, and strangers. You never know the impact that you have on someone. Brokenness is not something that you can see. It's not always visible. You can't always see it with your eyes. I mean, unless you know what you're looking for. And it's a similar, feeling and connection. Sort of like it takes one to know one. So sometimes you can tell that someone is broken, and sometimes you cannot. Usually you cannot. Maybe it's just the empath in me or whatever. I'm able to sense things, but everybody needs a light in their life. Lots of lights. And I think everybody should take the opportunity to help others. That's the whole reason why I started Pens for Pals. This all started with suicide and wanting it to stop. And, so much has happened in a year, but, oh man, we've come so far and we've helped so many people. It's just been an amazing journey so far. And we are able to offer resources that just were not available a year ago, such as to the police department. Now we have a program for them so that we can help them with management. So, between one call and the next one, because just like Eric said, you go straight from one call to the next one. One could be a death, one could be a speeding ticket, and you don't get to take the time to vent properly in between or grieve or anything. And it's just like that in healthcare too. Law enforcement and healthcare are like side by side when it comes to that. And it's a lot. It's so much to deal with. But I know I'm out of time. And again, thank you, Eric. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you guys for supporting Pens for Pals and Shield of Hope and everybody else who's trying to be the light in such a dark world. We need more flashlights, guys. So I hope you have a wonderful evening. Take care of yourself and always reach out if you need to talk to anybody. Just reach out, please. All right. You guys have a good night, and I will talk to you again next week. Thank you so much for everything.
Are you ready to be inspired? Are you ready to make positive changes in your life? Tune in to Be the Change, live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, featuring our heartwarming radio host, Tiffany Lewis. She's an empath, an indigo, and has a new and uplifting message for you. Every week, Tiffany can be heard only on Clear Source Radio, where people inspire people, from our soul to yours. You can get the